Good day, everyone. My name is Amdati Okufishala. I am going to be sharing with you the 10th and the last law of boundary, which is the law of exposure. And I'm going to be reading from this book called Boundaries by Dr. Henry Cloud and Dr. John Townsend. So let's begin. A boundary is a property line, it defines where you begin and end. We have been discussing why you need such a line. One reason stands above all the others. You do not exist in a vacuum. You exist in relation to God and others. Your boundaries define you in relation to others. The whole concept of boundaries has to do with the fact that we exist in relationship. Therefore, boundaries are really about relationship and finally about love. That's why the law of exposure is so important. The law of exposure says that your boundaries need to be made visible to others and communicated to them in relationship. You have, we have many boundary problems because of relational fears. We are beset by fears of guilt, not being liked, loss of love, loss of connection, loss of approval, receiving anger, being known, and so on. These are all failures in love, and God's plan is that we learn how to love. These relational problems can only be solved in relationships, for that is the context of the problems themselves and the context of spiritual existence. Because of these fears, we try to have secret boundaries. We withdraw passively and quietly instead of communicating an honest no to someone we love. We secretly resent instead of telling someone that we are angry about how they have hurt us. Often we will privately endure the pain of someone's irresponsibility instead of telling them how their behavior affects us and others and other loved ones. Information that would be helpful to their soul. In other situations, a partner will secretly comply with her spouse not offering her feelings or opinions for 20 years and then suddenly express her boundaries by filing for divorce. Or parents will love their children in giving in over and over for years, not setting limits and resenting the love they're showing. The child grew up never feeling loved because of the lack of honesty, and their parents are befuddled, thinking, after all we've done. In these instances, because of unexpressed boundaries, the relationship suffered. An important thing to remember about boundaries is that they exist and they will affect us whether or not we communicate them. In the same way that the aliens suffered from not knowing the law of the earth, we suffer when we do not communicate the reality of our boundaries. If our boundaries are not communicated directly, um, communicated and exposed directly, they will be communicated indirectly or through manipulation. The Bible speaks of this issue in many places. Listen to the words of Paul. Therefore, each of you must put off falsehood and speak truthfully to his neighbor, for we are all neighbor members of one body. In your anger, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you are still angry. Ephesians 4:25 to 26. The biblical mandate is to be honest and be in the light. Listen further, but everything exposed by the light becomes visible, for it is light that makes everything visible. This is why it is said, wake up, O sleeper, rise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you. Ephesians 5:13 to 14. The Bible continually speaks of our being in the light and of the light as the only place where we have access to God and others. But because of our fears, we hide aspects of ourselves in the darkness. where the devil has an opportunity. When our boundaries are in the light, that is, are communicated openly, our personalities begin to integrate for the first time. They become visible in Paul's words, and then they become light. They're transformed and changed. Healing always always takes place in the light. David speaks of it in this way. Surely we desire truth in the inner parts. You teach me wisdom in the inmost places. Psalm 51:6. God wants relationship, a real relationship with us, and wants us to have real relationship with each other. Real relationship means that I am in the light with my boundaries and other aspects of myself that are difficult to communicate. Our boundaries are affected by sin, they miss the mark and need to be brought into the light for God to heal them and others to benefit from them. This is the path to real love. Communicate your boundaries openly. Remember the story of the alien. The good news is that when God brings us out from the alien land or from an alien land, He does not leave us untaught. He rescued His people from the Egyptians because He taught them His principles and ways. This proved to be life to them, but they had to learn them, practice them, fight many battles to internalize these principles of faith. God has probably led us out of captivity also, whether it was from a dysfunctional family, the world, your own religious self righteousness, or the scatteredness of being lost. He has been your redeemer, but what He has secured needs to be possessed. Okay, what He has secured needs to be possessed. The land to which He has brought us as certain realities and principles. Learn this as set forth in His Word, and you find His kingdom a wonderful place to live. I'm not gonna lie, I feel very exposed by this law of boundary because of someone that someone did something to me earlier today that really like got me really really angry. Not angry like oh I'm angry, but like just kind of like I didn't expect it. Something that I thought that was done wasn't done, and the person was like kind of superior to me in terms of like ranking at work, and yeah, just got me angry because, well, I would say not angry again, just kind of upset. I think that would be the best word. Upset because like now I'm gonna have to figure out this whole thing myself and like carry out everything myself. Like it should have been done by them, and the person wasn't even apologetic about it. Sort of like, you know, putting the responsibility on me, like you should have figured this out. And normally protocol says that that person needs to figure it out themselves. And it's like, I'm just like, if you cannot do it, why don't you just tell me so that I will take on the responsibility onto myself, or at least find someone that will be able to do it for me, right? But the person that just kept quiet, months went by, something that should have been done like ASAP lingered, and that would literally like possibly cost me money in the future. And just a bunch of like things that I don't necessarily want to deal with, right? And I kind of did not bring it to light and say that, well, this is literally what you should have done and stuff like that. I just kind of like swept it under the carpet and was like, kind of like spoke about, like when you're trying to address a situation but not wanting to point any fingers and just like saying like, well, this is the issue. Like, how can I get it solved? And like, although she did give an input on how I can resolve it, but I didn't necessarily like keep her accountable for what she had done, right? And I gave her the opportunity to be accountable to me, but she didn't take the bait, and I think that it was very very intentional. And I think reading this law of exposure is kind of like even though I've given that person the opportunity to come out and just say that, well, I kind of messed up with this thing, yes, it's like, you know, but you know how this world is. And I feel like for me personally, like I feel like the world is so shitty and it's been shitty and I think it's getting worse that I don't have expectations in regards to certain things. Like, so yeah, I think it's not my responsibility to keep that person accountable. But then it's like, just like the authors said here, like there's going to be consequences, but it's very important as children of God to live by the principles of God and not to operate in fear, but in faith. Yeah, so that that person can, even though they react in a very negative way, a seed has been planted, letting them know that, well, all that, and you know I am who I am in Christ Jesus. No weapon formed against me shall prosper. You did something dirty to me, I'm gonna let you know. You know what I mean? But the word says like pick your battles, pick your battles. But like this is our responsibility as children of God to be truth tellers. Like, God has got us. You know what I mean? Like we're people of light. And if there's something like lingering in the dark that could potentially be something like that will cause us bitterness, like in the future, imagine like, the author talks about like the wife getting a divorce after the husband keeps violating her boundaries that she hadn't really exposed into the light. um Imagine like her getting out of the marriage, and she's going to be like very resentful towards the her ex-husband, and if someone asks her like, oh, did you get married and da da da, or like, are you married? Or she'll be like, yeah, I got married before I got divorced. The guy was like, did she would say a bunch of like negative things about him, right? But if she had really communicated her boundaries to her husband, right, all these things would not have happened. At least the man would have the opportunity to kind of like apologize, take accountability, maybe even get another chance. And if he messes up, then she has every right to be like, well, I tried, I communicated. It just wasn't, up to the task. But I think like when that power difference is there, like we're very discouraged to literally like, you know, attempt to deepen certain relationships, because again, when we communicate our boundaries and people understand no, or they understand our boundaries or apologize and really like treat us as human beings, like we're more likely to want to continue in that relationship, because like they respect our boundaries, they understand that they did something to hurt us, and they're willing to be accountable for that. But if someone is not willing to be accountable for what they've done, it's like, I don't want to continue my relationship with this person because of, they obviously don't respect me, they don't regard me, you know what I mean? And so, but if you never give give that person the opportunity to be accountable, or like really expose it, it's gonna be on you, you know what I mean? Like it's gonna be on you, and you're gonna end up like leaving that situation, but then it's gonna be like, yeah, I gave that person a chance, they didn't do anything, da, 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 da. So like you can obviously like tell what type of dilemma I'm in right now. um but yeah, I think it's very, very interesting. Yeah. um this is like the last law of boundaries, and I think I personally have learned a lot from this, and for me, like I didn't realize that I had a boundary issue, like for real. And to understand that actually like keeping boundaries, like it's pretty hard to keep boundaries and to instill your boundaries and to like um implement consequences and things like that. Like obviously like we're not all on the same level or ranking in life. People are going to be like more superior than you and things like that, but can you keep you know like your boss accountable? Right? Or can you, yeah, you know what I'm trying to say, right? um but yeah, I think it allows learning what we've learned so far, in this, well, 10 days that can extend it, because I didn't really film some days, but like this 10 days of like learning about the laws of boundaries, like we have learned the tools on how to deepen our relationship and kind of like how to filter through to really know like what people we should have in our lives, because we want people that are going to like really love and respect us, right? And I think boundaries has to really really, really important, and yeah. So thank you so much for watching. And I'm gonna see you guys later. Bye.